Soon after I enrolled as a graduate student at Cambridge, I encountered a fellow student who seemed unsteady on his feet and spoke with difficulty. I learned he'd arrived 2 years before me from Oxford, where he'd been, by all accounts, a laid-back but brilliant undergraduate. He'd recently been diagnosed with a degenerative disease and told he might not survive to finish his PhD. After this diagnosis, his expectations dropped to zero, and he later said that everything that happened afterwards was a bonus, and what a triumph his life was. Astronomers are used to large numbers, but few could be as big as the odds I'd have given back then in 1964 against witnessing Stephen's amazing crescendo of achievement, which spanned more than 50 years. By the late 1960s, he was wheelchair-bound, but in other respects, fortune had favored him. He married Jane, who provided a supportive home life for him and their children, Robert, Lucy, and Tim. In those years, astronomy was on a roll. We realized that black holes actually existed and that our universe expanded from a mysterious Big Bang. Stephen gave us new insights into black holes. And with Roger Penrose, he discovered a new mystery, that deep inside them, and in the Big Bang, there lurked so-called singularities, where conditions transcended all known physics. For acclaimed findings like these, he was elected to the Royal Society in 1972, when only 32. And 3 years later, he received the Pius XI Medal from this Academy. He was by then so frail that many suspected he could scale no further heights. But for Stephen, this was still just the beginning. Within a year, he came up with his best ever idea, encapsulated on the equation, which is now on his memorial stone. This eureka moment revealed the first firm link between the two overarching 20th century theories, the quantum theory, describing the very small, and Einstein's relativity, describing gravity and the cosmos. He showed that because of quantum effects, black holes weren't completely black, but emitted what's now called Hawking radiation. This discovery surprised all the experts. 40 years later, its ramifications still, in a colleague's words, caused more sleepless nights than any other physics paper in history. Stephen was always based in Cambridge and became a familiar figure, navigating his wheelchair around the city streets. In 1979, the university elevated him to the Lucasian professorship, once held by Newton and by Dirac. In 1985, he contracted pneumonia. He underwent a tracheotomy, which removed even the limited powers of speech he then possessed. But he was saved by technology. A computer, controlled by a single lever, allowed him to spell out sentences. These were then declaimed by a speech synthesizer with the androidal American accent that became his trademark. And this machine enabled him to finish a long-planned book. The feature film, The Theory of Everything, portrayed the human story behind his career and did this so well that the main characters were themselves content with their portrayal. But it chronicled only half of his adult life, concluding when the massive global sales of his book, A Brief History of Time, catapulted Stephen to stardom. From then on, he was lionized worldwide, in the White House, the Great Hall of the People, and here in the Vatican too. And he made countless media appearances. The concept of the imprisoned mind roaming the cosmos had global resonance. Stephen was far from being the archetype nerdish scientist. His personality remained amazingly unwarped by his frustrations and handicaps. He reveled in his travels, and enjoyed theatre and opera. He had robust common sense and forceful political opinions. He promoted many causes. Above all, we should acclaim his lifelong support for disabled people and his campaign for Britain's National Health Service, to which he acknowledged he owed so much. In 2002, scientists came from all over the world for his 60th birthday. But the celebrations weren't just scientific. That wouldn't have been his style. He was surrounded by children and grandchildren. There was singing and dancing. There were celebrities present. And when the week's events were over, he took a trip in a hot air balloon. And he later had a spin in the NASA aircraft that allows passengers to experience weightlessness. Pictures show him manifestly overjoyed to escape, albeit briefly, the clutches of the gravitational force he understood so well. As year by year his communication weakened and he got weaker, to his immense frustration, he became even less able to communicate his thoughts. But his pre-prepared lectures, accompanied by clever visuals, were still inspirational. And he reached his largest ever global audience when he starred at the opening of the 2012 London Paralympic Games. His mantra was, "Look up at the stars and not down at your feet. Try to make sense of what you see and wonder about what makes the universe exist. Be curious." Indeed, right until the end, despite the campaigns, the razzmatazz and his fragility, he continued to think about grand questions. What equations describe the bedrock of physical reality? What breathes far into those equations? Most challenging of all, he strove with many colleagues to understand how our vast and complex universe might have evolved from something microscopically small. Stephen described his own scientific quest as learning the mind of God. But this was just a metaphor. He actually resonated with the agnosticism of the great Charles Darwin. Darwin wrote, "I feel most deeply that religion is too profound for the human intellect. A dog might as well speculate on the mind of Newton. Let each man hope and believe as he can." But it's fitting that Stephen is now commemorated in Westminster Abbey, the UK's national shrine, alongside Darwin, Newton, Dirac, and other great scientific and cultural figures. His name will live in the annals of science. Nobody else since Einstein has done more to deepen our understanding of space, time, and gravity. Millions had their cosmic horizons widened by his books and lectures, and even more worldwide have been inspired by his really unique example of achievement against the odds. Thank you.